Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you. Please join me on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. The Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. I need you to like and subscribe, and then please share the show. I'm on LinkedIn, Santita Jackson. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on X at Santita J. We're streaming there right now. Everybody, like and share the show. Everybody, Andre. Hey, Andre Parker, Robert Williams, Lorraine. Hey, sweetie. Thank you all. Happy birthday. Yes, thank you. And please, everybody, please share the show and go to the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. I need you to become my friend there. You all still go to the landing page. Please go to Santita Jackson and Friends, Santita Jackson and Friends, and that is where we can connect on Facebook. So, everybody, do me a favor, Lorraine and Andre and Robert, like the show, share the show right now. Everybody who's watching, who's tuning in, who's listening, share the show, share the show. Wow. Who thought 2024 was not going to be an exciting season? Well, at the beginning of the year, we said it's pretty boring because both parties are, well, at least certainly the Democrats had predetermined their nominee. But oh, what a difference a day makes. I have learned my father was right. He is right. A moment in politics, you blink your eyes, it's a whole new day. It's a whole new day. And so just 2.5, 3 weeks ago, we had this presidential debate. And then that kicked off a discussion about whether, because President Biden really struggled through that debate, should he still be the nominee? So you have that. Then 2.5 weeks later, there's an attempted assassination of Donald Trump. There are a lot of questions about it, but it's changed the campaign itself. So what do you think about that, everybody? What do you think about that? And then who is J.D. Vance? Because I do remember when he was a never Trumper. Who is he? Who is he? This child of a single mother who was addicted to drugs. He was raised by mama, his grandma. He became really the voice of the white poor. But he also, because he struggled and very, very fine mind, he was afraid to go to college. So he went into the armed services. And he said, okay, I'm strong enough to come out. And then he went to college, came out summa cum laude, uh, went to Yale Law School, and has been a man of accomplishment. Just go, not Yale didn't just make him a man of accomplishment, but he's someone who continued to strive, pushed by his grandmother. Sounded like my great grandmother talking to my father, who was also um, a child without a home. She said, just make sure you're somebody. Boy, when I heard that part of his story, I have to tell you, Dr. David Gibbs from the University of Arizona, it just touched me because that was my great grandmother talking to her grandson, my dad. Um, and so the hillbilly elegy has really been a touchstone of sorts for all of us. How did he go from never Trump to, you know what? I'm his VP. How did that happen? And then what's still going to happen with President Biden? Wow. And what about the Trump docs cases? I'm throwing a whole lot at you guys this morning because I'm telling you, I blinked yesterday and boom, so much is happening. So, everybody, we got a lot of ground to cover. So, we want to know what your thoughts are. Hey, Zenobia. Hey, Linda. Hey, you all. You're making me feel so good, wishing me happy birthday. It's on the 17th, but I celebrate all months. So just keep those thoughts coming. But let's talk about JD Vance. Let's talk about the impact that this near assassination, because he was an inch or two away from having a complete headshot, which would have undoubtedly killed him, certainly would have addled him for the rest of his life. How is that reshaping the campaign? How is that reshaping this convention? Let's talk about the messaging with Attorney Robert Patillo, of course, National Rainbow Push Coalition, and the uh, host of his own show. You've got to listen to the show on Sundays on WAOK, the iconic Black Talk radio station out of Atlanta, WAOK. It's from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. Just be ready when you are going to go listen to that show. David Gibbs, God bless you, the author of The Revolt of the Rich. When you go on the show, I just want you to put on the full armor of God. You're going to get it all. But it really is a slice. That's the great thing about talk radio. So let's start with you, Dr. David Gibbs. JD Vance. Who is
Right.
he?
He's a very interesting choice. As you said, he's highly intelligent. I mean, apart from his Yale degree, I mean, and people go to Yale and you wonder how they got in, but he has high intelligence. As a young man, still 39, not in the Senate very long. You know, Let me say in the end, my guess would be that um, he's in a party that has long had a tradition of even more than the Democrats serving the wealthy classes and big business. He claims to be, and there's some evidence that he's going to break with that at a measure. He's adopted a populist look, and not just on social issues. Republicans traditionally are populist on social issues, against woke and they're against elite professors like me, that kind of thing. But not.
Those who are voting against the rich. What?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. I've written a book called "Revolt of the Rich"
That we
about
can get on Amazon.
yes, that's right, and it's we have this thing called class conflict in the United States, even if nobody wants to admit it. Mostly the rich have been winning all the battles in the last 50 years. Vance is a man who claims to have an economically populist orientation and wants to turn, he claims, I say claims, he wants to turn the Republican Party in an economically populist direction. That's his image. He's only been in the Senate for a year and a half, so we don't really know his record that much. He has done some things that indicate there might be something to it. He's been strongly supported by the Teamsters Union. Generally speaking, he's made positive, he made positive points about unions, very unusual for a Republican. He's spoken out very strongly about monopoly and the evils of monopoly. Again, very unusual for a Republican. The Biden appointee Lena Khan of the Federal Trade Commission is very, very much, at least in her orientation, a trust buster. I have to say I like her myself. He's spoken very positively about her, saying the only Biden appointee he likes. How much he means it, I don't know. How long it'll last, I don't know. But
let me ask you this, because his wife is very interesting, because she is someone who is a lawyer. They met at Yale Law School, right? And she works for a very progressive law firm.
Yeah.
And has very progressive politics herself. And they said that it is reported, shall I say, not they, it is reported by various reporters who've written stories, profiles of them, of her, of them, that she has helped to shape his philosophy. Because one of the things that was to me fascinating about Hillbilly Elegy is that I understood what he was saying. And because he was talking about the white poor.
Yeah.
And he was talking about living life from the downside of advantage. As my father says, from the manger up, not the mansion down. And he's not run away from that. Even as a venture capitalist and all of that. Okay, but he went to Yale and all of that. But he has stayed with that hillbilly elegy. That might sound like a contradiction in terms, but he's elevated the poor.
Well, it's possible. I mean, there's no question he's had a very impoverished background, one that'll speak to poor white people. I suspect there's even some black people who can identify with some aspects. I could be wrong about that, but some aspects of his background. He understands poverty. He understands what that means. Now, I should add that people with that kind of background who have not had good politics, there are also rich people who have had empathy with the poor. One thinks of people, Eleanor Roosevelt, for example, who was very wealthy, but she did have empathy with impoverished people. So it's not a guarantee. Nevertheless, it is a fact that he, at a gut level, understands what it's like to grow up poor, to grow up without economic advantage. And there's at least some evidence, I don't want to overstate this, that maybe he means it when he talks about economic populism. I should add also something else on foreign policy. He's somewhat different from when things traditionally of a Republican. On some things, he's been standard Republican line. On the Israel issue, he's strongly supportive of U.S. aid to Israel. He hasn't varied on that to any great extent. On Ukraine, however, he's been different, and he did not vote for the most recent aid package. He's given indications that he wants the war settled diplomatically as quickly as possible, and for U.S. disengagement from the war. Whether he'll do that if he were president, whether Trump will do that, nobody knows. But there are some indications he wants a more populist foreign policy, and he insists. Well, there's a tone of isolationism to it that has gotten emphasis, and that's there. I'm not a big fan of isolationism. I think there are ways the U.S. can engage the world without weapons, and that's what we should do. But nevertheless, there's also something else in his foreign policy, which is perhaps he's hinting at guns instead of butter. Is what we're doing, and he wants butter emphasized more strongly. And he is complaining that the American working class has been harmed by the overspending on things like Ukraine. And he's right about that. There's no question about that. And he's worried about that. And he, on account of that, he's very skeptical of the U.S. war in Ukraine. I happen to think that's one of his strongest points, because my read of the war, and people aren't talking about this, is there's no way to avoid the fact that Russia is going to win this war. And anything short of nuclear war will not be sufficient to stop Russia from winning this war. The U.S. has no strategy. NATO has no strategy, except wishful thinking, as far as I can tell. And the war should never have started. I think it could have been prevented, and certainly should be brought to a close as quickly as possible. And the United States should not be spending significant amounts of money on it anymore. We should not be lowering living standards on that account. And he is speaking to this issue and tying it directly to domestic politics and how it hurts the people of this country. That's a good thing. Again, whether they'll act on it or not is another matter. Historically, this is a real reverse. Okay, assuming this is a real turn on his part, and Trump selecting him is a real turn on Trump's part, assuming that's the case, which I doubt, honestly. I suspect the Trump second term will be much like the first term, which is populist language, but serving the rich. But assuming I'm wrong, and assuming there is a real turn, that would be a historic shift for the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. Because, as I said, their tendency has been, populist language about cultural issues, but serving the rich. All right. Now, if that changes even marginally, that would be a very important change historically, and a complete realignment, perhaps, of American politics, the American party system. Whether that'll happen or not, I'm skeptical. Just because the Republican Party has so much baggage. Trump has so much baggage. It's very hard for me to believe this kind of a turn could be achieved to any significant extent, other than rhetoric. Yeah, rhetoric they can do, but talk is cheap. That doesn't really matter. I'm not impressed by rhetoric. But if this happens, that would be a very big deal. The selection of Vance is certainly a way of signaling that Trump is serious about a more populist economic policy, at least in terms of the look of the party. Again, whether it's real or not is another matter, but he's trying to signal economic populism. That's how I see it. If you look at the party platform, it's much more moderate economically than I expect. It's not Reaganomics. It's not privatize this, privatize that, tax cuts for the rich. He's not trying to present himself that way this time around. There have been other people in the Republican Party who also have been calling for a populist Republican, economically populist Republican Party, most notably Josh Hawley of Missouri. I would like to see more of this. Honestly, I saw Bernie Sanders' campaign as economically populist, especially in 2016. And it did receive significant support. We've discussed this on the air many times from people who later on voted for Donald Trump. Yeah. And, if Vance is able to reach people like that with a real change, that would be an extraordinary development. I doubt he intends to pull it off or can pull it off, but we'll see. I'm open to persuasion on that point. There definitely is a constituency for something like this. There was recently I saw published, I haven't read it, but it looks quite interesting, a book called White Poverty.
Yes, I've read that.
It looks like a bestseller, and it's written by an African-American minister in North Carolina, the NAACP down there. And what I read about it, not read the book itself, he's very concerned about poverty among white people. And the way I would see this is two fields. Well, first of all, there's obviously a moral need to empathize with poor people everywhere. And, he, as a minister, presumably wants to do that. And, of course, that's a good thing. I think more importantly is a political need for that, because you need a majority in this country to get anything done. And, this is a multiracial country. It has to be a multiracial coalition. I suspect that is one of the things he's thinking about. There is a tradition of that in the Black community. I mean, Reverend Jesse Jackson, as you well know, that was something he was trying very much in 1988. And so there's a real constituency for economic populism. And Trump evidently, and Vance certainly, is going to play to that constituency. Again, how far he goes with this, I keep cautioning. How far he goes with this, if he goes anywhere with this, is another matter. But that certainly is the look they're trying to present here. Selecting Vance was a risky proposition for Trump. I'm sure it was a very deliberate one. It goes against expectations. And I guess we'll see how this plays out.
Well,
go ahead.
No. Please.
All the indications are that Trump's going to win this election. It's very hard for me to see at this point how he can lose.
Really?
Given everything that's happened that you've mentioned, the assassination is only going to contribute to it. Biden's physical and mental deterioration is going to make it very hard for the Democrats to win. There are all sorts of other factors. So the question is, what would a Trump second term look like? If I had a bet, it would look very much like the first term, which it was not good at all, obviously, in all sorts of obvious ways. But, I could be wrong. Who knows?
I only go back to his friend Roger Stone, the noted political operative.
What's the name?
Roger Stone.
Stone, yes.
The noted political operative who is who's a very interesting guy. And I remember before he said more controversial things, when then candidate Trump was running in 2015 and 2016, he was a regular on CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and he was exulting in the fact that he felt that Trump would break the two-party system. He said because he's not a Democrat, he's not a Republican, because he was going to run on the under the reform banner, which was Ross Perot, and people would be surprised at how populist his economic approach has been. I have other objections to him for sure, but on that, on opening the doors of opportunity to people of color, he has talked about that at least, and he has. I mean, indeed, he did a tour, Robert Patillo, with black business persons when he was about to run in 2015, asking them, you remember this, Robert, what do you want? And I remember I didn't really see Roger Stone much after he said this. He has the opportunity to break the black, the Democrats' hold on the black, on the black voters. And then another week or so later, he said, my disappointment is that he opted not to do that. He took the low-hanging fruit. But we have to remember that in 2015, 2016, not only were Bernie and Trump voters really, they were torn between the two because of what we thought was an economically populist message. Not me, because, I just love Bernie. But he said, but he took the low-hanging fruit. Because Hillary had the establishment Democrats and women. Bernie had the progressives. He took what was left. And he rode that horse right onto the presidency. And it's really, John Walsh said, Trump a populist, the guy who passed the biggest tax cut for billionaires and corporations. Where have you guys been? We've been here. I'm just trying to give you his history. I didn't say, but he is a populist. But you have populists who come from the right too, John. Okay. And, please, the KKK is populist. I'm not making him, a member of the Klan, but populist means you are popular with people. That's all. It's supposed to mean some other things, but if we're going to boil it all the way down to it, the lowest common denominator, there it is. He's running as a populist. He's self-styled as that. But let me. I want Robert to give us some insights. If you can stick around for that for a hot second. I want to remind you to get Dr. David Gibbs' book, "The Revolt of the Rich." It'll really explain the moment that we're in. That you have people who are now on the Republican side pushing an economically populist message, which is interesting. At least rhetorically, that's what they're trying to do. While Democrats are now being pigeonholed, or they're being characterized as people who are elitist, Ivy League educated, kind of out of touch, urban and urbane, and now the Republicans are fighting for the white working class. Help me. You had the Teamsters president last night who said, "I'm the first Teamsters president to do this, to speak to a Republican convention." I said, "What is going on here? What?" And then, of course, Amber Rose and and all the no. Hey, they were Tim Scott. I mean, this is the most. It's just interesting. Help me, because I'm help struggling.
We're in a place in American politics where people will believe will believe their eyes more so than they will believe reality. And so Republicans are pushing this, as you said, economically populist message. But as the comment said, while passing the largest tax cut for billionaires in American history, while raiding our Social Security and Medicare trust funds, you have a union leader speaking at the RNC convention while the Republicans are trying to do union busting. They're trying to destroy unions. They're trying to stop unions from being able to proliferate nationwide. The reason Elon Musk is supporting Donald Trump so much is because he believes that will stop them from unionizing Tesla. The reason Walmart is supporting them is because they don't want their stores unionized nationwide. When we talk about this idea of the white working class, they love the rhetoric. They love the American flag and the "I'm proud to be American" and the pickup trucks and the hillbilly elegy of the whole thing. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure they will like universal health care. I'm pretty sure they would like clean drinking waters, because if you grow up in poor rural America, most of that pollution is being put in your neighborhoods. These same elites that they talk about, guess what? Donald Trump had Bill and Hillary Clinton at his wedding to Melania. Chelsea Clinton and Ivanka Trump are best friends at one point in time in life. I don't know if they still are. All these people traffic in the same circles, are in the same elitist mentalities. The difference is Republicans have learned how to talk about these things in such a way that their voters will support things that are antithetical to their own economic and social best interest. Even imagine them talking about being a more inclusive party, but at the same time saying, "I'm going to round up 10 to 20 million people, put them in camps, and then deport them out of the country." And that's going to be the first thing that they do while in office. Saying that, well, we want to be a more inclusive party, but we also want to build a wall between us and another country. We want to be more inclusive, but we want to stop Muslims from being here. Donald Trump said, "I want an ideological test for anyone coming to America, and that if you don't believe in pro-American propaganda, we won't allow you into the country." That is beyond anything that that fascists would say out loud, but it's now become part of the American body politic, because people will believe what you advertise to them more so than they will actually investigate whether or not it's a good product. McDonald's stopped trying to make the best hamburger 60 years ago because they figured out if you put a little toy in the bag, people will buy it before the toy, as opposed to being worried about whether or not the burger is even food or even humanly fit for human consumption. And I think this all goes into what we're seeing on the international stage, where right-wing populist movements are rising internationally as a result of immigration. Look at Giorgia Meloni in Italy, Viktor Orban in Hungary, Lukashenko in Belarus. You can go through the far right-wing party of Le Pen in France that nearly took a majority from Macron, aligned with the far left of the party. Throughout Estonia and Poland, and even what Olaf Scholz is dealing with in Germany, you have these right-wing, white populist movements that are rising up on the international level, and much of it is based on this conceptualization of just the same thing we're seeing here, of African and Middle Eastern migrants coming to their country and then wanting to, quote-unquote, hold on to their heritage, to their language, to their society, Well, if you look at what really was pushing the Tories in Great Britain, the Rwanda plan to deport Africans on airplanes, or the boat people, back to Africa because they didn't want them in Great Britain. And that's very much what we're seeing here in the United States of America. And what they're doing with this populism is really playing on white fear. The white fear of extinction, the white fear of being left behind, the white fear of losing their country. They keep talking about, we want our country back. We want our economics back. They want to go back to this period, this post-war period in America, where you could graduate high school, go to the military, buy a house, take care of a family on one income. Women were kept in their place in the house, popping out babies and being quiet. Black folks weren't out in these streets protesting, asking for rights. When all these Latinos running around, the good old days for them. And when you take this and package it properly, and you bring out people to reinforce that messaging, that's what we're seeing in the body politic. And this is why President Trump chose J.D. Vance, because he didn't pick J.D. Vance for policy. He's been in the Senate for like a year. He didn't pick him for bringing in a swing state. Ohio is a solidly Republican state, has been so since George W. Bush. What he brought him in for was because he is well known. He's an author. He's involved in the movie industry. President Trump likes stars and star power. He likes individuals that can draw a crowd. So on that first night of the Republican debate, as you said, we had everything from OnlyFans models and rappers and all these other things that are things that the Republican Party has always been 100% against. If you grew up like me in the 80s, you grew up during the Reagan Revolution, Pat Buchanan, Jerry Falwell, Pat Robertson, Christian Coalition, the Moral Majority, 700 Club, and now that party has turned into Amber Rose, Stormy Daniels, and monster trucks. It very much is a sea change in American politics that we're witnessing directly before us, and they're wrapping it in populism, because once you can stimulate people's id, once you can start massaging their super egos, what they do is just start forgetting that while you're picking their pockets and making tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, getting rid of regulations, getting rid of workers' rights, deporting people who don't look like you, removing diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, firing 50,000 federal employees, ballooning the budget at the same time. Because remember, they always talk about fiscal conservatism and cutting the budget. Donald Trump spent $8 trillion in 4 years, and they could give less of a damn about it. Because as long as you put it in the American flag and that populist messaging, it allows them to do almost anything. We're seeing it throughout Europe. We're seeing it here in America, and we don't get a hold on it. We're very much sitting on that same powder keg of nationalism, sectarianism, xenophobia, jingoism that led up to to World War I. And as we're seeing these things happen, for some reason, we are falling for the same tricks, because apparently knowing history is now part of the woke elite being taught at major universities. And the only thing we need is a patriotic education, which is what they want to bring forward as part of their education platform. So America and the world are in a very wrought position. And I fear that if we allow this populism to run unchecked, just as Plato said to Aristotle, there is the negative side of democracy that allows a demagogue such as Alcibiades and some of the dialogues to really take control and steer the nation into a ditch, and that's where we're headed to.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody, please stay with us in the chat on the Santita Jackson Show, because we have got to find out kind of where we are. I want to know what your thoughts are, Robert. And yes, everybody, we have read Project 2025.
Mm-hmm.
We're not supporting Donald Trump. What we're trying to do is explain we're just trying to give you the facts, because trust me, they're going to run on these. They're going to run on these. You have got J.D. Vance, who's married to a woman of color. They've attacked his wife, who's Indian. He has gone after people on racism. So he's got cover there. Economic populism, he has not run away from having grown up white and poor. He's got cover there, and he's going to use it. He's become iconic in that space. Hillbilly elegy, y'all. I mean, really. So let's not talk about, what we wish. Let's talk about what is. We're getting a little bit of we're getting a little bit of feedback from you, David Gibbs, but I did want to give you the opportunity to respond before you go, because I want to. When you tell me you have 30 minutes, I take you seriously, and I want you to come back.
I'm certainly not. Well, thank you. I'm certainly not a fan of. I've never voted for Republican. I would never vote for Donald Trump or J.D. Vance,
Mhm.
honestly. And my expectation is exactly what Robert Patillo said, which is that, well, they've served the rich in the past, at least certainly Trump has, served them very loyally. And my guess is, if I had to guess what he'll do in the second term, is exactly what he'll do in the second term. But I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, and I could be wrong. Certainly, they're giving the image they want to do something else. Whether they mean it or not, I personally doubt, but we'll see. Um, and that's the very fact that they're trying economic populism as a style and as an image, whether truthfully or not, is interesting and different historically from what the Republicans have really done in the past. I suppose I agree with everything Robert Patillo said in terms of sort of criticizing the idea that the Republicans have any kind of populist bone in their body, because certainly in the past they have not. Quite the opposite, even more than the Democrats. I suppose I would slightly disagree with one point he made just about immigration, is that my views on this have evolved in that, on the left, people like AOC seem to want more or less open borders and, abolish ICE, for example, abolish borders almost. I have to say it's come to my attention that is very unpopular, including among many immigrant groups. I live, again, in southern Arizona. I've been stunned by the extent to which there's significant elements of the Mexican American community that are not enthusiastic about open borders or immigration that is not done by the book, so-called illegal immigration. And, there was an effort to make Tucson a sanctuary city a few years ago. It failed by 71% voted against it. And I was stunned by that. Being in an academic bubble, I thought, Tucson being a liberal city, people would vote for that. But it must have had very strong negative vote among Mexican Americans because they're the dominant bloc here. And so I don't see this as I think it's a mistake to view this as exclusively a white racist issue, because I think it's much broader than that. Certainly in Arizona it is. I suspect nationally it is too. And I think that, Democrats, liberals, and leftists are going to have to compromise somewhat on this issue of immigration if they want working class support, if they want to go beyond college professors like me.
But wait a minute. Obama sent more people home than anybody.
That's right. That's right.
And Biden has stayed with the Trump policies. I mean, let's not act as if the Democrats and Republicans, that there's daylight here. There really isn't.
That's true.
In terms of policy.
Well,
and you have a Republican governor who, instead of taking migrants back across the border, since they're so offensive to him, and he's a member of the World Economic Forum, I might add, Governor Abbott. So you have to look at him because he is a globalist, and that's important. I think that's important to note. He sends them all over the country. I'm like, really? So what's that about? Really, what is that about?
And just for real quick on that point, we actually could absorb that number of people into the country, but instead of sending them where they're needed, they send them to where they're politically controversial. So you send them to New York City to overburden the social services system instead of sending them to farms in Iowa where you can actually build a life. You send them to Chicago so that they can create a racial strife with African American communities for access to resources, instead of sending them to Wyoming to work on cattle farms where we really have a deficit of employees. So it was a devious strategy using human beings as political pawns. And I have of course, a sensitivity, being the son of a Haitian immigrant coming here, and the way that we've seen Haitian migrants treated throughout American history and being used as political pawns. But this idea of just almost treating migrants as the smallpox blankets of politics, and just shooting them to areas to try to break them down politically and break these causes, versus actually having a consecrated policy. And I think that Biden, when we talk about his chances for re-election, I think that he should push forward an executive order sometime the next month really handling the immigration issue and saying, look, this fix will only last as long as I'm president. But, when the next guy comes in, you guys have a choice in November if you want this fix in place or if you want to go to this policy of rounding up people, hunting down migrants, having the jackbooted thugs kicking in doors around the country, dragging children out their beds, throwing them in vans and driving them across the border. If that's what the America we want to live in the Project 2025 America, we have to be able to make that contrast. But right now, Democrats don't have an actual plan or policy.
Absolutely. David Gibbs, the Revolt of the Rich on Amazon. Everybody, you need to get it. Your thoughts, and what do you think we should be? Because I'm going to have you back tomorrow. You know that, because I want us to walk through this convention, because the Republicans are doing a switch up, change up on their messaging. And you do have people, you have Black people, you have women, you have a vice presidential candidate who is poor, grew up poor and white, doesn't run away from that. In fact, that's at the center of who he is. And when you listen to him talk, there's a lot that you can agree with, right? I remember when Reverend Jackson, you remember this attorney, Robert Patillo, who's been with Reverend since he was in college. He did a march through Appalachia. One of the persons who took one of the big legs with him was Jerry Falwell, Reverend Jerry Falwell. He said, I grew up here. And while he and Reverend had their differences politically, on some things they agreed. And they were together on that, and they would work on that. Robert, you're a witness to it. So I'm saying I'm seeing the dam break, if you will, in terms of phenotype and philosophy, because people are much more varied politically, much more nuanced than we even want to say. But when they're talking about this whole unity piece, I'm trying to figure out, okay, unify on what? What is this thing? What's this? Because now, since this assassination attempt, which was awful, I mean, it was awful that it happened to President Trump, and it was awful that that a man was killed. Who had, thank you, Robert, who had a very interesting background. He was, one could say, stridently racist, but he still didn't deserve to be killed. He didn't deserve to be killed because he went to a rally supporting his candidate, trying to shield his wife and children. Come on, you guys. But there's a lot to unpack here, David Gibbs. And I want to know what are we looking at over these next few nights, because we're seeing some things. When I saw the head of the Teamsters, I went, really? Wait a minute, because Reagan, fine, there was no one more anti-union, and yet he got your support. I'm trying to help me.
Well, one of the things I see, someone like J.D. Vance, I see a failure of the American left. I'm not talking about the Democratic Party, but the activist left, and that the activist left should be mobilizing people like those that J.D. Vance is addressing. And, they haven't really been doing that very effectively. The American left is composed it's focused mostly on college campuses and college educated people. And if you listen to someone who's a left-wing organizer, they speak in a jargony style. They talk about intersectionality all the time. They use terms like cisgender normativities. And the truth is, people hate language like that. They really do. And it's amazing that left organizers haven't changed their style, and they refuse to. They're very attached to a certain vocabulary that is extremely unpopular. And, there's been a lot of talk about, the left promoting unionization. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, if you look at the numbers, unions go down almost every year. They're at their lowest level in about a century. And, the public wants something different. They want two things. First of all, they want a break with conservative economic policies that concentrate wealth. The public is really sick of that. Substantively, that's the main thing. But also there's a style of politics which is unfortunately more common in the Democratic Party, which is very elitist and kind of condescending. And it's not popular at all. And the Republicans have always played on that stylistically while serving the rich even more than the Democrats have. The question is, can they break on this in terms of policy and move in a populist direction? My guess is probably not. There's just too much baggage there. Probably it's going to be more for show, but we'll see. I mean, fact of the matter is, if you have this dissatisfied group of working people in the United States, the majority of the public, that really does want something different substantively and stylistically, and they're not getting it from either party, and they're not really getting it very much from the Democrats. or from the activist left, people like AOC, honestly, who mostly appeal to college-educated people, mostly people with high incomes, people like me.
Mhm.
And if the left doesn't organize these people, people like J.D. Vance may give it a try. And that may be exactly what the Republicans are trying to do here, which is historically interesting. It's been pointed out, and this is absolutely correct. Populism isn't always a good thing. There have been very dangerous forms of populism. Indeed, the KKK had a populist angle. One could say early on, at least, the Nazi Party was a extraordinarily dangerous version of populism. So we shouldn't think populism is automatically a good thing. But this is a democratic country. You need to appeal to the majority, to the people. And so we shouldn't disparage populism automatically, because that's a recipe for losing. And, the emergence of someone like J.D. Vance and it's being placed on the ticket to me underscores a real failure by the Democrats and the activist left. And I'm very surprised. One thing about the activist left is we never learned lessons from past failures. We always
Mm-hmm.
repeat past failures decade after decade after decade. I'm very impressed by that, I have to say. Um, what I'm hoping they'll do at some point is finally sit down and say, what did we do wrong? Why is the right mobilizing people? We should be mobilizing. And then let's mobilize them and just, reach them at a level they can understand and accept.
But wait a minute. The people who mobilize, like a Reverend Jesse Jackson, and mind you, everybody, I'm not talking about my dad. I'm just talking about, I mean, no one has registered. He has registered more voters than anyone in the history of the Republic. That is established fact. It's been codified. Bernie Sanders
That's right.
would draw 50, 100,000 people. I mean, he had people excited. You felt when Bernie was coming to town, and the Democrats throw them under the bus. They continue to go after people who are not coming back. LBJ told you we've lost them for a generation, maybe two. They ain't coming back. They don't want to register voters. That mean, so yeah, and you missed an opportunity with a JD Vance, who could have been part of a conservative part of the party, but there's not enough philosophical space for him to say, you know what, all of this new language, I don't want to be bothered with that.
Mm-hmm.
But he
Well,
gets shouted out the party. Robert, I'm sorry.
well, just on that point, me being a conservative Democrat, I've almost been run out of the party on pretty much every year of my life. It's only through grit and grind that I still remain here because I'm a person. From a double wide trailer in Waverly Hall, Georgia.
Mhm.
So I support guns. Grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, so I'm a pro-life person. And many of the things that are currently part of the Democratic Party, they've turned into, instead of a big tent party, an ideological big tent party, they've very much turned into an exclusive club. And if you don't agree with everything that is part of this agenda, we no longer want you. You're no longer welcome. We don't even want to hear your voice. So people who would never even be considered Trumpers or MAGA people or Republicans, Trump has figured out how to stylistically and rhetorically speak to them in such a way that they become interested. I don't think any of us would ever imagine Mitt Romney having the support of 50 Cent, Waka Flocka Flame, Amber Rose, and Sexy Red. That's just not something that was part of the
What
Republican Party.
David Gibbs did not know who you were talking about. He thought you were gone into speaking in tongues.
Just David, do not Google any of those people on your work computer. You'll
Waka
get a call. You'll get a call from HR. But the point is that rhetorically you have to open those things up. The Democratic Party and the progressive movement can't just be a party of blue-haired baristas talking about international climate change agendas and Greta Thunberg, etc. Meanwhile, there are people who were not handling the bread and butter issues. And the reason people basically fall to their knees and cry when Trump enters a room, because I've literally on my timeline when Trump was nearly assassinated, people were posting images almost comparing him to the divine. Not saying that he was saved by Jesus, but he may be the reincarnation of Jesus. This is how far he's gone. And it's because when they were down and out, Donald Trump sent them a check. It was because he spoke to these issues they felt that connected directly to them. And when you have Democrats talking above the heads of voters, you're not going to get their support. And a big part of it, as Professor Gibbs said, is the rhetorical aspects of it. Republicans know how to speak on a 7th grade level and on a 3rd grade level that people can understand. Democrats, you need a doctorate just to get through a conversation half the time. And I'll give you one example before turning it back over. On the issue of immigration, if you ask your standard Democrat, what do we need to do on immigration? They will say, well, we need to have a multilateral agreement between the other nations within our hegemonic sphere of influence so that we can stem the tide of migration while also supporting development programs in Central and South America, while also creating a pathway to citizenship and the guest worker program, dealing with the dreamers, while also modernizing our immigration and asylum system to deal with the international norms set out by the international courts, to be in comportment with the rule-based order. The Republicans will say wall. That's the whole thing. Wall. That is their immigration policy. Wall. If you're in 3rd grade, you understand what a wall is and you understand what a wall does. And until Democrats can get the entirety of their conversation about immigration into wall, it's going to be hard to reach those people.
Well, I'm going to tell you, when I started at Fox News, Roger Ailes said to me, first thing, let me give you some advice. And he critiqued everybody who was on the air and was a mentor to Rachel Maddow. Yeah. Helped her to negotiate her contract with because they're across the street from each other. Plus, he started MSNBC and CNBC, everybody. And if Roger liked you, he didn't really care about your politics. He liked you. He said, look, Santita, let me tell you, one of the things that your father does magnificently is put it down where the goats can get it. He said, remember, I need you to bring your language down to that of a 6th grader. He said, I didn't say talk down to people, but bring it here so people can get it, so that people can understand it. There's a reason that Fox is the most watched cable news system, beyond the fact they give you great makeup, women look great, all that. He understood that. I mean, even Donald Trump understands that we're into looks. How this is supposed to look. I mean, show business. Yeah. And he's been working with rappers and boxers because that's part of his world. The casinos and show business. Hey, I mean, the man's from show business. He had a big show. He was a big NBC star when he started running for president. You can't make this up. It's like the ultimate reality show. But here we are. And what are we looking at for the next few days and months and maybe years? Because it seems like Republicans have made some adjustments and Democrats continue to barrel forth. They're condescending as they talk to people, and they don't make space I would say, for Robert and I. I'm a preacher's kid. My family are from the South. There's some things that, I didn't grow up in a household that was pro-abortion. But as my father evolved, he said, look, I'm not going to stand in your way. Women need to be able to handle their health care safely. That having been said, if you say, well, can women have the option to have a baby and maybe adopt, or maybe we can have more family-friendly policies, you will get shouted out of a Democratic event. People look at you like you're crazy. I'm like, well, wait, what's the problem here? But it seems that Republicans are giving people some space, and I'm saying this, everybody, because I think we need to be clear on what we're going to be watching the next few days. Because I promise you, some folks are going to say some things that might change your mind. Because I know you didn't expect to see Amber Rose there last night. And they might have Snoop Dogg walking on the stage, or somebody, or Mike Tyson. I don't know. I mean, some people who we see, touch, and feel, they're going to do that. So, I've got, about 3 minutes here. And I'm not going to repeat what Chappelle said about what this man was wearing on his ear, a personal product. But there we go. But he was bleeding from his ear, although, as you explained it to us yesterday, Attorney Robert Patillo, we don't even know, how his eardrum wasn't blown out.
Well, that's the interesting thing, that now there's saying that it may not have actually been the bullet that hit Donald Trump, but a broken glass from the teleprompter, which would make so much more sense that is probably the answer.
Okay.
but that also ruins the myth making of the event. That Sniper barely misses Donald Trump by an inch is a great story, and he triumphantly holds his hand up. Shooter was nowhere near Donald Trump, hit a piece of glass that cut his ear. Sounds a whole lot less heroic than the story that is being pushed currently. But the physics of it make a whole lot more sense of how you actually get the angle where a piece of glass can hit his ear versus a bullet whizzing by, which probably would have taken his ear off. But to your point of what you were saying about rhetoric, what Donald Trump has done is something that I don't think any of us ever thought could be done, which is he's turned the Republican Party into the cool kids table in the lunchroom. The nerds are all sitting over at the Democratic table. They're worried about budgets and deficits, climate change, workers' rights, healthcare, education, all that nerd stuff. Over at the Trump table, they got the music blaring, Kid Rock is shooting machine guns into the air. You've got Amber Rose, and you got Sexy Red, and you got Woe Vicky and Lil Pump, Lil Uzi, Lil Wayne. You got Mike Tyson and Joe Rogan. You're walking into the UFC fight. You got the blonde hair. Like when President Trump was picking his lawyer, and she said this on a podcast recently, the lawyer in the New York case, that you know what I'm going to say. Where they asked her the question, would you rather be smart or pretty? She said pretty, because you can always fake being smart. And if you look at the people that, and I'm not saying that. If I said that,
It's
that would be
true. It's true. You went.
It would be misogynistic if I said it, but she said it. So, but Trump understands the optics of it. He didn't care about having a good lawyer. He wanted a pretty lawyer that looked good on television. This is why, if you look at the Trump orbit, just the women around the Trumps, the wives, the girlfriends, etc., it is, and I didn't say this, Jimmy Kimmel said this, he said everyone in the family has lip injections, because it's about how you present on television. It is about how you look. It's about the big hair. It's about the big implants. It's about the lip injections, the dresses, the pageantry. And we as progressives, we say, well, that's not part of what we want to promote. We want to promote women's rights, women's equality, all those things. Trump understands that it's a TV show at the end of the day. You're producing an entertainment product at the end of the day. He wants the optics to be right. Think about when he was being pulled up by the Secret Service after the assassination attempt. The first thing he said was, "Where are my shoes? Get my shoes. I can't be seen walking off this stage with my shoes looking weak." He started fixing his hair while they didn't even know if the assassin was gone yet. He made sure to get right back in character and pump his fist, because he understands the optics of it and looking strong. And now we are seeing, of course, the meme of Donald Trump surviving a gunshot and pumping his fist in the air versus Joe Biden trying to walk up a flight of stairs. That is what he's trying to project, and that is what he's projecting. And Democrats have to understand that you can be right on politics. You can be right on policy. You can be right morally. You can be right economically. Everything you say can make sense. If you compare first terms of presidents, Biden versus Trump, legislatively, it's not even a comparison. I mean, like, it's so much not a comparison that we don't even talk about it. That the Republicans have given up on even talking about policy. You can't. There's nothing down. Go ahead.
They obscure it. They're like, no.
And they try to find excuses to explain it away, but you can't explain away 3% unemployment. You can't explain away 16 million jobs being created. You can't explain away $1.7 trillion in infrastructure spending after every week was infrastructure week for about 20 years. Biden got it done. Chips and Science Act, we're bringing chip production back to America, future-proofing us against the Chinese invasion of Taiwan. That is massive. That is humongous. That is earth-shaking, and we won't feel the full repercussions for 20 years in this country. One of the biggest pieces of legislation of our lifetime, pulling America out of COVID, reopening the country, reopening the economy, basically seamlessly. But so much so that many people have almost forgotten that COVID was at the beginning of his administration. They did that seamlessly.
But Robert, they don't say it. They're not leading with that. I got 1 minute for you. Help.
Look,
I'm trying to figure out what the Democratic convention is going to look like.
It is going to be a funeral. They might as well bring Biden out to do his acceptance in a casket, because all the cool kids are over at the monster truck rally with Trump. Do you want to hear the progressive voices talking about what they're going to do to bring down the carbon emissions, or do you want to see Kid Rock shooting off fireworks while drinking Fireball? I mean, we have to admit who we are as a country. There's who we say we are, which is what Democrats are representing. We want policy. We want people who know what they're doing. And then there's what Republicans are doing, which is WWE has been in business for a long time. Because of the spectacle of it. We all know wrestling is fake, and they still make millions of dollars doing it every year. And that's the same thing Republicans have realized. If you turn the party into just a giant WWE wrestling match, turning into Monday Night Raw, turning into a Royal Rumble, then this is what it happens. And there's a lot of Americans who will buy into the fakeness of wrestling as opposed to the reality of sitting in a library with boring Democrats.
Attorney Robert Patillo, you are so brilliant, and I think you are on top of it, because optics matter. And let's be very, very clear. We do care about these things. We are a looks-driven society. We want to know where you went to school. I mean, those things really do matter to us today. Y'all, they're leading with the fact that not that he went to a public university, but he went to Yale. J.D. Vance. I mean, that's until we decide that we are going to change, until we decide we're going to change what really matters. This is where we are, everybody. But I'm concerned about this economic populist message that they are selling, because that is a big deal. And I'm wondering where this is going to go in this. Well, stay right here. I want you to give me, if you can stay with me just give me a little piece of this in the next hour on the Santita Jackson Show, because I want to hear some of that. I got to get as much out of Robert as I can. Can't tell you why yet, but we're going to do as much as we can because he's doing some big things. And we are so proud of him and so excited for him. Going to see him on a world stage just where he belongs. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show, everybody. Click the link for the second hour, and let's talk about Trump, the documents case, J.D. Vance. Hey, we can't even get off of J.D. Vance, but that's a biggie. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute.